All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Amalia Weber. I'm the program specialist here at Rochester Hills Public Library, and I'd like to welcome you to this evening's program, Bulgaria and Balkan Wanderings. Before we get started, I'd like to take care of a few housekeeping details. Firstly, tonight's program will be recorded and available to view about 1 week from tonight on our YouTube page and on the RHPL website shortly after. We ask the audience members please silence or turn off their cell phones before we begin in order to avoid any disturbances during the presentation. Additionally, the lights will be dimmed once I finish this introduction in order to provide better viewing of the screen. If you have trouble viewing the screen at any time, please come let me know so that we can accommodate you. We'd also like to thank the Friends of the Rochester Hills Public Library and their many fundraising efforts. It's thanks to their support that we can provide wonderful programming like tonight's presentation. Our next program is Hell from the Heavens, which will be an in-person event on Tuesday, February 28th at 7 p.m. You can sign up for that at calendar.rhpl.org. And now, without further ado, please welcome our presenter, Mariya Fogarasi.
You said that so nicely. Almost as if she knew that the S is an SH in Hungary. Anyway, good evening. My name is Mariya Fogarasi, and thank you for coming out on this. Can everybody hear me, first of all, on the mic? Yes. Should I speak more loudly? Oh, is it on, Amalia? Yes, it is on. Oh, I see. Yes. Hold. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, so my name's Mariya Fogarasi, and my family and I lived in Bulgaria for 3 years. I met my husband working in Germany. He is a retired Foreign Service officer, not with the State Department, but with the Department of Commerce. And after we were married, we were in Toronto, and then the Berlin Wall opened up, and a whole number of countries gained their freedom. And the U.S. Embassy in Bulgaria did not have a commercial service at that time because almost 100% of the trade had been with the Soviet Union. So my husband was asked 2 or 3 times whether we would go to Sofia, and the third time that Commerce asked, we said yes, because it's very good for your career if you can open an office. And his heritage, my last name, Fogarasi, is Hungarian, so it wasn't quite Hungary, but it was very close to Hungary. So off we went to Bulgaria in March of 1992, and we were there for almost 3 years. So this is my presentation. And I chose a rose as the opening slide because the rose is very, very significant for Bulgaria, which you will find out. I think we're going to dim the lights just a little bit, right? So the colors. And just because it's so close to Bulgaria's National Day, I included these 3 motifs that I took off of the web. March the 3rd is the Bulgarian National Day, and it commemorates the liberation from Bulgaria from the Ottoman Turks. They had been under the Ottoman Turks for 500 years. And then in 1878, there was a war, and not just Bulgarians, but with the help of the Russians, some Belarusians, they defeated the Ottomans. Then Bulgaria had a certain amount of autonomy after that within the Ottoman state. And then in 1908, they did achieve independence. So we're just going to prematurely, although it's not quite March the 3rd, we're going to salute the National Day this evening. So the first thing I want you to know is that Bulgaria uses the Cyrillic alphabet. And there you can see some similarity to our letters, but not quite. This is an alphabet that was developed by 2 brothers, Cyril and Methodius, who were born into a wealthy family in Thessalonica, in Greece, in the 9th century. And although the picture on the left is a little bit deceptive because they decided to forsake all their worldly wealth, and they became missionaries, and they wanted to spread the Bible. So they created the Cyrillic alphabet from the Greek alphabet and used this for spreading the Bible, and traveled actually all the way from Thessalonica as far as Prague, which in those days would have been quite a distance. They are the patron saints of the Bulgarian Orthodox Church. You can find their icons everywhere. They are the They have their own holiday in Bulgaria. It's very unusual. May the 24th is Cyril and Methodius Day. And on this day, they and the culture, the language that they developed are celebrated. It has different names. Sometimes it's called Slavonic Script Day. Sometimes it's the Education and Culture Day, just Cyril and Methodius Day. But that would be their holiday on May the 24th. And they are also, and here it is, just letter to letter, just a matchup. So there is a lot of similarity, but it is also different. Bulgaria isn't the only country in the world. Other countries who use this are Russia, Ukraine, strangely enough, Mongolia, and I think there was one other one. But anyway, this is the script in the same direction that we would read from left to right in Bulgaria. And Cyril and Methodius are also the patron saints of the National Library. And so there they are, their statue in Sofia in front of the library. So I had a friend who went to a Catholic Mass last week, and he told me, oh, the priest said today is Cyril and Methodius Day. And I said, really? I said, that's interesting. I had never heard of that in February, but I guess everybody interprets it differently. But in Bulgaria, it's May the 24th, So this is what we're talking about this evening. We're talking about this country here in southeastern Europe, just for purposes on the eve of the first anniversary of this horrible war. Ukraine is up here, so there's no common border. Bulgaria does border the Black Sea and Turkey and Greece, and then over here Serbia and Romania. And the Danube River, just before it empties into the Black Sea, starting in the Black Forest over in Germany, is the most of the border between Bulgaria and Romania. So we are quite far south down there in Bulgaria, and ever so roughly, for comparison purposes, about the size of a state, the size of Tennessee. So there's Bulgaria, and this whole area is called the Balkans. And this term was actually given to the area by a German geographer in 1908 who mistakenly thought that the Balkan Mountains, which you'll hear about in a minute, they actually start here and they go through the whole country of Bulgaria, but he thought that they continued throughout the whole peninsula. And Balkan, I looked it up, and it means mountain in Turkish. But it's not only a geographical term, it's also a historical term. This is a very turbulent area in history, and but Bulgaria is one of the Balkan countries. And just so you can see exactly how mountainous this area is, this is a great map showing, for instance, you have over here Sarajevo, where the 1984 Winter Olympics were held, and we're going to talk about the mountain ranges in Bulgaria. They actually cover about 1/3 of the entire country, and as you can see, the entire area is latticed with mountains there. So these are the 4 mountain ranges in Bulgaria, and there is a saying that the mountains give birth to people and the fields give birth to pumpkins, which I guess elevates the status of the mountains in the country. But the mountain ranges would be the Balkan Mountains, and then the Rila, and then the Pyrenees, and down here, the Rhodopes. So the Balkan Mountains are not the highest, but they do stretch across the entire country. And apparently, you can hike up on a high ridge and look down on sweeping vistas on either side, literally from almost the western border of the country all the way over to the Black Sea. They aren't the highest, but they do have the fiercest weather, and their highest peak is Mount Botev, named after a Bulgarian poet. The next one are the Rila Mountains, which someone compared to. So mountaineering and any kind of hiking is very, very popular, obviously with 1/3 of the country covered. And so one poet compared the Rila Mountains to an infinite desert, as if you're wandering between the lonely peaks. The Rila Mountains have the most popular probably for foreigners if they were to come to go hiking, because they are accessible accessible from the capital, Sofia. And you can go up here, and these are the 7 Rila lakes. And they're glacial lakes, and they flow from one to the other by small streams. And they have names related to their shapes, such as Kidney Lake or Eye as in the human eye lake, or the Twin Lakes. So this is a very popular hiking destination to go up and see these Rila lakes. And the Rila Mountains is also, okay, for instance, this would be one of the mountaineering schools that you could choose to attend if you want to perfect your skill. And the Rila Mountains are home to, you'll hear more about this later on, but the Rila Monastery, which is the country's #1 architectural, cultural, and historic treasure. It's a working monastery with about 60 monks, and it's up in these mountains in a very beautiful setting. So that would be the Balkan and the Rila, and then we're coming down a little further south. By the way, this would be a typical offering for a tour if you were to arrive in Bulgaria and then hike in the Rilas, and then they name the mountains, and of course you would be visiting the lakes and the monastery, and this would probably be for a more experienced hiker, but they're all different kinds of levels, and you could do a section of this or just go up to the 7 lakes up there and then just do that. So you could stay in a very rustic house like this, or you could stay down in one of the big hotels in a ski resort in Bansko, which also in the summer is equally attractive. This would be the highest peak there. That would really only be for people who are intrepid and experienced. And these would be coming down to the Pirin Mountains, and you can notice right away the difference, the gray, the very fierce peaks, and granite and deep glacial lakes and conifer forests. And this park is a World Heritage Site, and in 2020 had a major victory because the park management had proposed logging and construction in about 50% of the park, and it looked like they were going to succeed. Can you imagine what it would have done? But then there were protesters, and it went all the way up to the Supreme Court of the country, and they ruled in favor of nature. In fact, I think the headline was, in a time of crisis, victory for nature and the rule of law in Bulgaria. So this was the final court win. And because the ecosystem is intact and it's gorgeous, and it really would have been a crime. The park does have to deal with a very popular ski resort, Bansko, so you always have to be careful with the environment, but that is contained. And of course, the park is home to a number of not only trees. Actually, it's supposed to have a 1,300-year-old conifer tree, the oldest on the Balkan Peninsula, and of course, it's got its share of nature. So that was really great for Pirin. And then the Rhodope Mountains are the furthest south. They would be the most hospitable to humans, and these would be the roads where the ancient Thracians would have been, and then the Romans coming through on their conquests further, going west, northwest, up into Europe. So they have very gentle slopes where the shepherds can have their sheep and then bring them down closer to the Mediterranean when colder weather comes. There are a lot of programs here also for hiking and for staying in guest houses, and for mountain biking and horseback riding. So, and you can see that compared with some of the other pictures where you could see that these are lower elevation. And then this would be, for instance, promoting mountain biking or horseback riding also. So when we went there in 1992, none of this literature was available. You know, if you consider the Berlin Wall opened up on the 9th of November, 1989, and then these countries were really just starting to regain their freedom and get back on their feet, and there wasn't a lot of advertising for this kind of thing, but we still found our way, so that worked out all right. So so this is the capital, Sofia, over here. And so we're going to take a look at Sofia, and then we're going to make some day trips from Sofia. And then we're going to make our way over to Plovdiv, over here. And then eventually we will end up at the Black Sea in Varna and Burgas. So that's the general plan of travel for tonight's talk. So this is the flag of the country of Bulgaria in the upper left-hand corner, the white standing for freedom, the green for the agriculture. It's a very, very agricultural country and sun-soaked country, blessed in that aspect. And red for the struggle, for the independence, for the ongoing bloodshed. And this is the flag. So from 1990, not 1990, after World War II, after the Iron Curtain came down, then Bulgaria became the People's Republic of Bulgaria. So the flag remained the same. And by the way, the flag is patterned on Pan-Slavic colors. Usually the Pan-Slavic colors are red, white, and blue that you see in Croatia or Russia. And but Bulgaria, and they were developed at a Congress in 1948 based on the flag of the Netherlands. But Bulgaria chose to substitute green for blue because of the agriculture and how rich it is in the country. So when communism took over, they kept the flag, but they did put this symbol up in the top left corner, and it is a lion, and he has wheat sheaves around him, and he's got the red star on the top, and down on the bottom he has two dates. Initially he only had the date of the 9th of September 1944, which is when the coup occurred by the Bulgarian, very small Bulgarian Communist Party backed by the Russians, which then took over the country. But then at some point they added the date 1681, which commemorates one of the founding of the Bulgarian kingdoms. So the flag doesn't have that on it anymore, and this would be obviously the flag that you would see if you go to the country right up here. So we know the term Iron Curtain. Many of us probably know that Winston Churchill had been voted out of office towards the end of World War II, and he later became prime minister again, I think in 51 or 53. But anyway, Harry Truman had invited him to come to the United States in 46 or 47, and they went to Harry Truman's home state of Missouri in a town called Fulton, and it was here where Winston Churchill gave this very, very famous speech where we have this phrase, Szczecin is in Poland. So from Szczecin in the Baltic to Trieste in the Adriatic, an iron curtain has descended across the face of the continent, and behind that line lie all the capitals of the ancient states of Central and Eastern Europe. So it's very poetic, it's very definitive, and obviously the term Iron Curtain lasted. And it's still everybody, well, most people still know what it refers to. So this is Bulgaria down here, and Bulgaria had been, like so many of these other countries, leaning towards Nazi Germany, but as the tide of the war turned, they switched their sympathies, and the country is very small and not very strong, and it did have a fledgling communist party, probably about 11,000 people, but Russia took advantage of that and came in, and then, as I had said, in 1944 there was the coup to overtake the government. So unfortunately and sadly, it was probably one of the bloodiest coups in all of the former Central and Eastern Europe as far as the communist takeover goes. There were probably 2,000 people killed right away, and then up to 90,000 that were either left the country or ended up being imprisoned. And it was a very harsh form of communism that Bulgaria did experience during the Cold War years, especially compared to some of the other countries behind the Iron Curtain. This man here, Todor Zhivkov, ruled with an iron hand. He was actually in power for 35 years, which made him the longest running leader of any East European country during the Cold War years. And we see him down here in 1971 with Mikhail Gorbachev, whom many people credit being the one who really, as the Berlin Wall was, as things were rumbling in East Germany and the Berlin Wall opened up, Gorbachev is credited with not having put his foot down and sent in the tanks to stop anything. So Bulgaria during these Cold War years was completely beholden to the Soviet Union economically and militarily. And if you towed the party line, you had a pretty decent life. Zhivkov had a very stable economy. You could have access to good education, good health care, good schooling. But if you didn't toe the party line, then your prospects were very, very dim. And especially if you were of a minority, such as the Turkish minority in the country, or the Roma, which we usually we call them gypsies in the United States. They were marginalized. They were out at the edge of society. Frequently, they had to change their names so that they would sound more Bulgarian. And there were also concentration camps. So Živka was not a pleasant person, but he did manage to hang on to power for 35 years. So if you compare Bulgaria with a country like Hungary that was really westward looking during the Cold War years, I'm not going to say that they were a free country, but there were tour groups from Hungary that could travel to the West. Tourism was enormously popular in Hungary, especially from, say, if a West German couldn't get a visa to visit his or her relative in East Germany, then they would meet in Hungary. And you could have a very limited amount of private enterprise. It was very controlled, but still. And so, but this was in complete contrast to Bulgaria. Bulgaria did have some tourism from the East Bloc countries. You'll hear about that. But anyway, it was just very, very repressive. This would have been a typical, and this is the only slide I'm going to show from the old days. This is something, I don't know if you watched North Korea in the last week when the United States and South Korea started their joint exercise, and North Korea pulls out the rockets and has this kind of parade. So this would be a typical parade back in the communist day. This doesn't exist anymore. Here we have, cheering us on, Marx and Engels up here, their banners, but this is all gone. This is downtown Sofia. But sometimes you have to know about the past or understand the past to go forward into the future. And so because he had such harsh repressive measures, Zhivkov did put up a lot of statues to try to pull the country together. For instance, this is the statue to monument to the Soviet army. So the Bulgarians were supposed to be grateful to the Soviets because Russia had helped liberate them from the Ottoman Turks. Well, obviously, they were soon to find out that it was going to be another kind of repression. It wasn't really a liberation at all. But this is a very, very significant monument in the capital where you've got the soldier up at the top with his gun, and then you've got a woman holding a baby and a man standing behind the soldier. And one more would be the Mound of Brotherhood. This, by the way, you never ever would have seen graffiti on these statues during the Cold War years, but now you see graffiti everywhere in the world. And this statue commemorates the partisans who were struggling for the communist cause during the wars of World War II before the takeover occurred. This particular monument, if you look at these groups of fighters down here at the bottom, at least twice has had a makeover. This would have been done during the night and had Moscow really clenching its teeth. But of course, this is post-1990. Moscow is not in control anymore. So a group of artists decided that they would depict superheroes on this. And then looking back, and now we know what's happened, which makes this even sadder, but in 2014, when Russia first invaded Ukraine, this was done under cover of night, and those would be the Ukrainian colors there. So it's probably all been scrubbed off, but anyway, this monument has a lively history as far as just different political opinions goes. This would be a monument to a Bulgarian revolutionary, Vasilevsky. He would have been someone who was fighting for liberation for Bulgaria during the 1800s before they finally gained their liberation from the Ottoman Turks. This would be another one of these typical, let's give thanks to the Soviet Union for having saved us. And you can see the opinion of that in Sofia. People don't really want to give thanks or think about the Soviet Union as oppressor anymore. And then you have very typical East Bloc architecture, the very determined look on the face, the peasant women, the going to work for the glory of the fatherland, and all of that. So just some of those examples. And this is a very interesting monument. This is the largest monument in Bulgaria, and it's very bizarre. And it was built in 1981 to be the official party headquarters for the Communist Party. And it cost the equivalent now of $35 million to build this. It took something like 6 years and 6,000 workers. And the name is Buzludza, and it's not so far from Sofia. but it's just this monstrosity, but no expense was spared. That pylon on the top would have had two 12-meter ruby red stars on it initially, and then there would be all kinds of, I had to take some of these pictures from the internet. I have to give the internet credit, but there would be verses from the Internazionale. There would be the wall panorama, the famous leaders in Soviet history. There would be crystal chandeliers. It was just absolutely incredible. So if you think about it, they built it in 1981, and then in 1989, everything was all over. Todor Zhivkov apparently did put a bottle inside the wall, sort of a time capsule, and I guess that's been found. But this is very popular in Bulgaria, communist day tours, where you do go and see these monuments. And someone has managed, I don't know how safe it is, but someone has managed to climb up there and take a look out. And, well, I don't know if that one will ever be torn down. I think it would just be a huge job. But anyway, it's again, not a tribute to good history, but it's something that is part of the history of the country. So Bulgaria is a member of NATO and is also a member of the EU, but they're not part of the Schengen Treaty, so they have their own currency. They use the lev, the L-E-V. Here's the plural in Cyrillic, leva. This would be 20 leva, so I think it's about $10. And it's the Bulgarian National Bank. And every once in a while in a crossword puzzle, you'll see a currency with 4 letters, and it's usually LEVA. So anyway, yes, but they use their own currency. And we are going to go right to the heart of Sofia now, downtown, to the Alexander Nevsky Cathedral, which is one of the largest Eastern Orthodox cathedrals in the world, and the second largest on the Balkan Peninsula after one, St. Sava in Belgrade. So this absolutely gorgeous cathedral was built for the purpose of giving thanks when the soldiers from Russia and Montenegro and Belarus and Bulgarians fought against the Ottoman Turks, and then, so that was 1877, 1878, to help Bulgaria throw off this 500-year yoke. This church has a golden dome that is about 45 meters high, and then the bell tower would be 50 meters high. It's the main church for the Patriarch of the Bulgarian Eastern Orthodox Church. It's Sofia's #1 landmark, and it holds about 5,000 individuals, although I should say that in the Orthodox Church you don't sit, you stand, unless the elderly, the pregnant, the ill would be sitting. But I asked some Bulgarians about this, and they said they felt that it meant that you were closer to God or ready to do service to God and be his willing servant and standing out of respect. The church, Alexander Nevsky, was a Russian prince who was canonized at some point in battle, and so it is named, actually I should say cathedral, not church, but it's built in a Neo-Byzantine style. And so you might ask, why is there even an Eastern Orthodox church? So the Great Schism of 1054 started back in 800 when the Pope in Rome crowned Karl the Great, or Charlemagne. He was up here in Aachen in Germany, and they crowned him Holy Roman Empire. And the Eastern Church over here in Constantinople, which we know as Istanbul, felt that that was a real slap in the face. They felt that they were marginalized. Since Rome fell in 476, they had pretty much kept the faith alive, this Catholic faith. And from then on, things went downhill. And then there were differences. In Constantinople, they didn't know Latin, and obviously in Rome, they didn't know the language that was spoken there. And then over on the eastern side, they used leavened bread in services, and over in Rome, they used unleavened bread, and things spiraled, and then there were very minor differences in the liturgy. And so this is called the Great Schism of 1054, when the Catholic Church split and the Orthodox faction came into creation. So they're still close, but they are different. And this is why Bulgaria has the Orthodox faith. And this is a picture with Peter, St. Peter on the left, and then this would be an Orthodox, man of the cloth. And this is representing the schism and the split in the church there.
And it's very beautiful inside. It's, you know, lots of icons, the chandeliers, and obviously you can visit and you can look around and you can attend a service if you so wish. And we do have in the greater Detroit area also Orthodox churches. So this is Alexander Nevsky Cathedral. And then it's really pretty the way it's illuminated at night, and with the plaza all around it. And then if you go from Alexander Nevsky and you look back up here, you arrive at a mountain. Actually, it's sort of a mountain massif because it's almost square. It's 17 miles by 19 miles, or kilometers, excuse me. And it's Mount Vitosha. And literally, Sofia is right at the foot of Mount Vitosha. And there are villages up on the side, too. So when we first moved there, we were in an apartment downtown. And then my husband, so during the Cold War years, you didn't rent your house to a foreigner. I mean, you just didn't. It wasn't allowed. But in 1990, everything opened up. So this was March of 1992. So he would go driving around to all these houses and asking people if they wanted to rent their house. And then he worked out a deal whereby we did find a very pretty house in a village on the slope of the mountain. And it wasn't quite finished, so he worked out a deal with the owners that the U.S. Embassy would use the rent money to help them finish the house. And so that was really a marriage made in heaven. So we lived in this house and on the slopes of Vitosha. And but even before, so through all time, Vitosha is your getaway from Sofia, and just out in the air for skiing, for hiking, for whatever. The four peaks come together. This is known as the Black Peak up here, or Cherny Vra. And you also have to remember that there was a lot of the the reporting on each other, as in different communist countries, and so you were free out in the fresh air, and nobody could eavesdrop on you, and just to get away and to get out of the city. This is a weather station up on the top. There's also skiing on Vitosha, and again, these trails or these books will help you find your way now that they are in print and looking very enticing. So, and then Vitosha comes down and then turns into a pedestrian walkway, which is typically European, with cafes and restaurants. Here it would be in the evening. There's the man with juggling the fire with his hat there. So just really pretty. This did not exist when we lived there yet. And this is a father and son. Slavikov is the family name. He was a poet, a publisher. He further developed the Bulgarian language, so they have this tribute there on a bench to him. So this is no longer called the Sheraton, so that's my faux pas, but it was when we lived there. So this is the Sofia Hotel Balkan, and this was built in the 50s, and this is a superb design of socialist classicism, the architecture, and it was combined with luxurious furnishings inside, whereby your average Bulgarian would never have seen the inside of this hotel, would never really have had any reason to go inside. And but obviously for our standards, it's just a very beautiful hotel. It was very popular with the expats, the expatriate community, the small fledgling business community that was there when we came, and the embassies. And for instance, we would have receptions here, or in 1992, we watched the election results here. And so this is part of a complex. You'll see the whole complex. Okay, so this is the outside of the hotel here. And then, lo and behold, look what happened. Just about 8 to 10 centimeters below the surface, there was suspicion of some kind of a ruin there. And they didn't only find a ruin, they really hit the jackpot, because this is a massive, massive building that they suspect, after careful study, they think that, well, some of the walls are 1 to 2 meters thick, so they believe the building had more than one story, and they found evidence of underwater heating and coins. So this is from the Roman time, and it is believed to either have been a series of thermal baths. The Romans always loved to have their baths, or possibly the legendary palace of Constantine the Great, who was the first Christian Roman emperor from 306 to 337 AD, and who liked to visit Serdica. Serdica was the name of Sofia during the times of the Roman Empire. So this is just fascinating stuff. I mean, and what a draw. And I do believe that a lot of EU funding has gone in to help Bulgaria bring these diggings, these treasures, this whole archaeological site to light and to show it off. And so this would be right next to the hotel. And then right near that hotel is another hotel called the Arena de Serdica, and they found the remains of an old of an amphitheater where you would have had the fights of the fierce, the battles man with beast, one of the largest, they believe, amphitheaters in the Roman Empire. And they built it very cleverly because even if you're not staying in the hotel, you can look down and you can see part of the ruins. So a lot of thought has gone into the planning and how best to develop this and make it accessible in many, many, many different ways. Bulgaria is very proud of its religious tolerance. It has always been a country where, even though the Eastern Orthodox religion will prevail, it does not exclude other religions. And so even though it was complicit to a point with Nazi Germany, it never delivered its Jewish population. The Tsar at the time and others, the Tsar's name was Boris III, felt, well, for whatever their rationale was, they kept this Jewish population safe. And so right around this hotel is what Bulgaria calls the Square of Religious Tolerance. So this would be another smaller than Alexander Nevsky Orthodox cathedral right here. This is St. Nadalia. And then you have this really pretty little St. George's Rotunda, and it's surrounded by the Hotel Balkan. And St. George's Rotunda is possibly the oldest building in Sofia. So it's believed to have been built around the 4th century and probably was used for ceremonies and probably even celebrations at the time. And then after Christianity came through, it could have been used for baptisms. When the Turks came, it would have been whitewashed inside, so the religious pictures would have disappeared, and it would have been used as a mosque. And then afterwards, it was closed for a while. It was a mausoleum, and now it's back to being a very small Orthodox church. So it has a very lively history, and again, a tribute to St. George. And then we have a beautiful synagogue in the Moorish revival style. It's one of 2 in the country. You could have had up to 1,300 worshipers here at one time. But many of the Bulgarian Jewish population after World War II left for Israel, and the rest are fairly secular. So usually you have about 60 worshipers in the synagogue at any one time. And the chandelier is said to have come from ancient Palestine and weigh about 2 tons. So that would be the synagogue. And then there is a mosque left over from the time of the Ottoman occupation called Banya Bashi. And it is apparently right near or on top of some thermal springs, and you can sometimes see the steam coming out of the vents. So all of these religious buildings combined make up this square of religious tolerance. They're all in a close proximity to each other. And so again, Bulgaria is very proud of this fact. So this is the archaeological museum full of treasures. I've already told you that the Romans were here, and then the Thracians were, let's see, is that correct? Let's go back to that. The Thracians were warrior tribes. They thrived in what we now know as Bulgaria during the 2nd and 3rd century BC. They never really managed to get a state. They lived on the fringes of the Greek and the Roman civilizations, and they were known for waging war, making very good wine, and superb, very nice, very good wine, and superb metallurgical work, jewelry, belts, and very sophisticated. And so there's a lot in Bulgaria is a treasure trove of all this ancient lore combined. And this was found about 200 miles or kilometers east of Sofia, maybe about 10 years ago. And this is unparalleled in the find of the antiquity, because this is the burial mask of a Thracian king, and it weighs 1.5 pounds, and it's pure gold. So that was quite a find, and that is in this archaeological museum. Just one of the things that you can see. And then this is the outside of the museum, the lion that everybody has to sit on or rub his nose for good luck, and then the tribute to the unknown soldiers that so many countries have. This is a palace. This is actually a former palace. It's now an art museum combined with an ethnographic museum. I had mentioned Boris III, who was the king during the Second World War, and this palace would have been home to his father, Ferdinand, who married a woman named Marie Louise of Bourbon-Parma. And, well, this was their city palace, and then Boris would have been their son, and then there was a daughter. So when Ferdinand was married in about 1893, he very much wanted his capital city to be on a par with Budapest or Vienna, which were much more grand, but Sofia didn't even have paved streets at that time. So his Habsburg relatives had these bricks, which were made in a clay pit near Budapest, sent to Sofia as a wedding gift, although they weren't actually laid down until 1907. So you can see that Sofia has these, and they wanted the bricks to extend from his palace over to the newly built National Assembly. So now there are a lot of jokes about, were you born on the yellow brick road and things like that, and but the yellow brick road is still there, and so this would have been Ferdinand on the left, looking very regal with a lot of medals on his chest, and then with his wife in this Marie Louise in this other picture here. These bricks can actually be kind of slippery when they're wet. And so you just tread carefully, but they are a landmark, and they are a symbol of the city. And inside, as I said, it's now the National Art Museum. So this is a very interesting way that they've chosen to portray the paintings, but very good. And then also ethnographic museum showing costumes and describing traditions from different parts of the country that you can look at. This is no longer existing, but I want to show it to you because after the Second World War, when communism rolled in, the first leader was Georgy Dimitrov, and when he died, they decided to do with his body what you have all heard of Lenin's tomb in Moscow, and they built this mausoleum for him, and they put it up remarkably quickly in 6 days, and it's very costly and very laborious to maintain these mausoleums. I think there's one in Hanoi for Ho Chi Minh, if I'm not mistaken. But there's a climate control and all kinds of other things. And every Bulgarian school child had to visit here at some time, and there were obligatory ceremonies on the holidays. And when we moved there, this was still standing. But then at some point, Sofia decided it just wasn't correct to have this. This is right across from the former palace, by the way, so almost a slap in the face of royalty, quote unquote, which goes against the grain of communism. And so they decided to take it down, but it was so well built that it took them 6 days to get this monument finally down. And so the joke was, took 6 days to build, took 6 days to take down. And this is something that you would not see if you go there anymore. Yeah, maybe they buried him somewhere. I could look it up, but he's not in there anymore. So, right. He was a casualty, right, of the change, right. This is the National Assembly, again, surrounded by the yellow brick road. And then this would have been Tsar Alexander, who would have been the father of Nicholas, the last Russian Tsar leading up to the revolution. So Alexander led the charge in 1879, when the Russians came in and helped the Bulgarians liberate themselves from the Ottoman Turks. So he is standing up on a horse, and then he's also depicted here in battle. And here he is, his back is towards us, and he's facing the National Assembly, and behind that you can see the golden domes of Alexander Nevsky. And then there is a covered market, which has been renovated, and which is really a lot of fun to visit and just see what is for sale there. There is, this is the Church of St. Nicholas the Miracle Maker. It's a small Orthodox church built on the former site of a former mosque, also very, very popular with visitors. And this is the National Theater. The National Theater, if you were to go into the lobby, there are panoramas telling the history of Bulgarian literature and Bulgarian drama and showing actors and actresses. You can only access the lobby if you have a ticket. Probably these days everything is done online. I'm not quite sure, but it is definitely worth a visit, even if you were to see something in a language you don't understand, just to have the experience of going in there. And it's quite ornate inside. And again, it's all been refurbished. And in front of the theater is this reflecting pool. So our U.S. Embassy was very close to this theater. It's since moved to a new location, and it was kind of a little rabbit warren of an embassy with just like little tiny stairs and tiny little rooms, and it was in a dead end. So when we went there in March of '92, we had a 9-month-old daughter, and so when my husband went into the embassy to introduce himself, I just took Christina over to the park, and I sat down, and I took out this can of formula and this bottle of water, and I put the formula in the bottle, and I shook it up, and all of a sudden I realized that everybody in the entire immediate surroundings was watching me so curiously of what I was doing. And it was a real interesting time to come to Bulgaria because there wasn't a lot in the stores, and so all the foreigners would always be exchanging information like, oh, did you hear this new joint venture, this German-Bulgarian department store has opened, or, oh, they're selling diapers, here, disposable diapers. And everybody would drive about, Thessalonica in Greece was 3 hours away, and the closest Greek town was on the border about 1.5 hours away. So if you go, and we're not with the government anymore, but I'm going to assume that this may be the case. If you go to a country where you might not be able to get everything you could in the U.S., it's called a consumables post. And so before you leave, you can have this big catalog, and you can order up to a certain weight of items from the catalog. And so, and then the State Department will ship it, even though my husband was Commerce, but the State Department runs this, and then they will ship this. So you could have, a year's supply of disposable diapers in your basement, calculating about 5 a day. And, you could have your cake mixes that you knew you weren't going to find, or some hamburger helper, or something else that's just going to get you through those days until you can get up and running. Or maybe you're in a country where you're never going to find those things. I don't know. But this was a consumables post for us. So lots of, I just have to say, the playgrounds were not in really good shape. And my daughter once said to me, I said, Bulgaria Sofia just doesn't have the money to fix these playgrounds up. And then she said, well, why don't they buy the money? So, it's just, kids are just so cute. So it was an interesting time, but very rewarding also. This is a kiosk, which is very prevalent in Europe in the parks, where you can get magazines or cigarettes or a little cup of very thick, strong coffee. And I included it in the show because I think it looks so pretty in the snow. And then I'm coming to something that happens every year on the 1st of March. And actually, we still, so there is a Bulgarian community in Metro Detroit, and they're fairly active. They have a monthly newsletter, they have a school for children learning Bulgarian, and they have dancing, and they do have a lot of different occasions throughout the year. And they were planning on putting martsanitsas. Sometimes they put them in front of the library in Troy, I know. Maybe sometimes this library, but if you ever see martinitsas at a library in this area, you'll know. So what this is very unique to Bulgaria, and this is welcoming and wanting spring to come. And it's also known as Baba Marta Day, so Grandma Marta Day. She's supposed to be a very grumpy old woman. And if she's smiling, it means that spring will be coming sooner. And if she's grumpy, it means that you're in for a longer winter. And then you have the colors, white being for the snow, the melting snow, hopefully, as spring is coming. And then the red meaning spring, fertility, bloodshed, but in a positive way, just life continuing. So martinitas are always red and white, and they can be made out of cotton or silk or twine. And you make a martinitsa and you give it to somebody. Here we have an example of a school class, and you can wear it around your wrist, or it can be a little tassel that you pin on your shirt, and you are hoping that spring will come soon. And then you give them to each other on the 1st of March, and then you're supposed to pin it the first time you see a blossoming fruit tree, or also if you're out in the country, the first time you see a stork, which would be a sign of the storks coming back and spring being right around the corner. So the martinitsa is very uniquely Bulgarian. They also have these two little dolls. This is kind of artistic, right? The wind caught it and it's up in the tree there. And then this is, I believe, Piso and Penda, the little boy and the little girl. They're very popular also as martinitsas. And so if you're ever hearing about martinitsas or around the 1st of March or for Bulgaria, you'll know what this means. And this, I like this because here even somebody made the family cat a martinitsa. So he's looking very beautiful there with his decoration. So again, when we lived there around Alexander Nevsky, there were a lot of stalls set up for souvenirs. This is more regulated now, and those arbitrary stalls are gone. But the icons are always very, very popular souvenir gifts. These are actually Russian. They're the nesting dolls, but they were also very popular there. And then this would be the old collection of Bulgarian war medals that some people like to collect. So just a sample there. This is you're probably showing, like, why is she showing us this? So Ferdinand, who lived in the palace on the Yellow Brick Road, he was an avid naturalist. And he was not only a naturalist, he was also a lepidopterist. He collected butterflies, and an ornithologist. He studied birds. And this is the oldest museum in Sofia, and probably in the Balkans, the biggest natural history museum. But I chose to show it because so when we moved there, I had two really little children, and if we weren't going to a friend's house, we didn't really know where to go. There was, no McDonald's ball cage, or in bad weather, what would we do? So we would spend hours in this museum, and sometimes we would be the only people there. But so I can just see Christina and Michael like racing around, and we were. So I had to include the Natural History Museum, but also a tribute to Ferdinand. And then this is on the right is the backside of the Hotel Balkan. So this is a complex of 3 buildings. This would have been in the old days with the red star on the top. In 1990, the Bulgarians stormed this building and actually wanted to torch it and burn it down, but it wasn't burnt down, and it is now composed of offices for the National Assembly. But this is a very another great example, like the Hotel Balkan, of the classic socialist architecture, and it's called the Largo. This is the Tsum department store, which was a department store that everybody had to visit if they came to Sofia, because you could find everything. And of course that has been modernized now, and you can still find everything, but in a different way. And being a communist country, there were no names. It was simply called the department store. And as some of you probably know, if you were going to buy vegetables, you went to a store that said vegetables. Or if you wanted bread, you went to a store that said bread. I mean, there was no private enterprise at all. So that's the central department store. And then this again would be the National Assembly. And then on the back side of the Hotel Balkan is the President's office. And this here again is another absolutely fabulous way that they're showing off the ruins down below. So they've got this glass bubble top, and this gentleman is not the mayor of Sofia anymore, but he was in this particular slide that I chose. But I just wanted to show you how lovely they've made it look. And again, incorporating and thinking ahead of time how to show this archaeological treasure off to to the world, really, and with that strip extending down the middle of the street there. And this would have been probably before all of that was discovered. So still nice looking, but even more fascinating at this point now. So where did that red star go that was on top of of that building I had showed you, the Communist Party headquarters? It went to the Museum of Socialist Art. And when they opened it, when they thought of the idea, there was a debate: Museum of Totalitarian Art, Museum of Socialist Art. Well, the latter won, and they decided that these statues that they had, that they didn't want to have on public display anymore because they were related with the communist era, would be brought to this park because they're part of history. And so this is in Sofia. And this is a park that anybody can visit, and here it is without the snow. And this gentleman right here, this is going to be, if we know Vladimir Lenin holding his coat there. And so it's an outdoor park, and it's also an indoor park with all kinds of a display about the communist era. Movies, posters. This is the despised dictator Joseph Stalin. This is Lenin again, and it's quite comprehensive. And so it's also for school children to learn about the past. And so they have found a way to take all this stuff out of their beautiful city, but still keep it as a history lesson there. And you probably wouldn't visit this as a tourist, but you would certainly notice it. This is called the National Palace of Culture, and it's a probably massive conference and exposition center. And it was built in 1981 to commemorate the 1300th anniversary of the founding of the first Bulgarian state. It has about 10,000 pounds of steel. It's a mass of steel and glass, and it was the brainchild of the daughter of Todor Zhivkov. Her name was Ludmila Zhivkova. She had an unusually high post and amount of power for a woman. We don't frequently hear about Central East Europe in the Cold War years, about women who held any power, maybe Elena Ceausescu, but not many others. And so she was literally in charge of all the education and cultural programs. She passed away at the age of 39 of a brain tumor, but this was her idea, the Palace of Culture. There are 3 floors underneath, and then about 7 or 8 above ground. And my husband was very fortunate. His commercial service office was in there, so it was more accessible to the business people who were coming to visit, as opposed to the embassy, which is layer upon layer of security. Of course, after 9/11, he would also have had a great deal of security, but we weren't there at that time. So this is the Palace of Culture, and they have now made that also look really pretty with the pavilion in front of it and the water fountains. And then this is one more idea that Ludmila Zhivkova had. This is a tribute, a monument to the bells. When UNESCO declared 1979 to be the year of the child, she had this designed in a remarkably short time. The 4 pylons are supposed to point to the 4 corners of the earth, and then there are 7 bells at the top for the 7 continents, and then there are 95 bells in 2 semicircles around the edge, each one denoting a different country or some organization that is devoted to children. So that's the Monument of the Bells. So we are heading out of Sofia now, and we're going south, and we're going to go into the Rila Mountains, and we're going to visit this Rila Monastery that I had said is the #1 cultural, architectural, and historical building in the country. So the monasteries really are Bulgaria's great wealth. The country is latticed with them. They're all up in the mountains. Some of them are fairly inaccessible, built on rocky cliffs, and they were really the depository and the safekeeping of Bulgarian literature and culture through many, many years, including the 500 years of Turkish domination. And this is the largest and most well-known. This is the Rila Monastery. This was first built in the 10th century, although it didn't look like this in the 10th century. It's named for a monk, Ivan Rilsky, and his student. He lived in a cave, and his students would have built a very simple monastery at that time. Unfortunately, it burned in 1833, and then wealthy Bulgarians from all over the country sent contributions, and this example of the Bulgarian National Revival architecture is just stunning. It's a beautiful, beautiful building. This is again that picture I showed you at the beginning looking down. There are about 60 monks who live there now. It's an easy day trip from Sofia, and it's a very popular day trip. And again, it would be an Eastern Orthodox church with the icons and all the murals outside. And then it would have the souvenir shop there, and it would have little places nearby where you can get something to eat. This would have been Ivan Rilsky the way he is now depicted, this hermit monk. And I like the way this is because the undulating curves of the building with the snow on them. This is a spa, nearby spa, or hotel, I should say. Yeah, spa hotel. I don't think Ivan Rilsky ever dreamed he might have a hotel, this kind of a hotel named after him. And he's also on the banknote. There's the Rila Monastery, and then also on the coin. So the Rila Monastery is very, very significant for the country. They must be doing something other than praying. I think they sustain themselves there, but I don't think that the wine or the honey is for sale. I think it's just for them. Yes, yeah. But they do open it up. I also think that you can apply to spend a night there. They have very limited spots, but I don't know a lot about that program. So. Oh, well, it was a safe haven, so it was not approached by the oppressors or the occupying force. And also in the 1800s, the revolutionaries who were plotting against the Ottomans were able to take refuge there and find a safe haven of sorts. And a lot of the literature and the painting were in these different monasteries across the country were produced there, these works of literature. So very, very important for the national cultural just progression and survival. And I had showed you that one other ski resort, Bansko. This is one very close to the Rila Monastery called Borovets. And again, big business. And I read an ad that says, and way cheaper, by the way, than a ski resort in our country would be, you can imagine. So cheap, Borovets in Bulgaria, a cheap and cheery vacation. So there you go. And then hiking in the summertime, just beautiful, beautiful trails, and mountain biking. And this was built for Ferdinand and his family. This was his hunting lodge, Sarska Bistrica, very, very close in that general area. And it would have been, we were able to go in here, but I don't think it's open to the public anymore. There's always a lot of debate about these these former royal palaces, about whether you'll see King Simeon in just a minute, whether they belong to Simeon or they belong to the state. I'm just not sure of the status of this lodge, but this would have been where this would have been Boris III, who did not deliver the Jewish population, and very tragically, he came back from a meeting with Adolf Hitler in 1943, and he died a short while afterwards. And this was where his family was living during the war, so his wife and his children would have received the really sad news that, and so history suspects that he may have ingested a very slow-working poison. We're not sure, but it was clear that that Mr. Hitler was not very pleased with Boris III. And so this is Simeon, and this is his sister. I can't think of the sister's name right now, but I'm going to jump from this just for a minute back up to Sofia, because this is, when I showed you the palace on the yellow brick road, I had said that was the downtown palace, but this palace is right on the outskirts. We didn't even know it existed when we were there. A lot of people in Sofia never even knew it existed because it was just trashed after World War II and left alone. And now they have started to restore the gardens. Ferdinand, being the naturalist, and Bulgaria was a very young country when he was the king. It didn't have any greenhouses. It didn't have any collection of seedlings. So he had plants sent from all over the world. And the gardens are supposed to have over 400 species in them. And you can access them, but you have to buy a ticket ahead of time. So this palace, not the name of the town, Varna, the big town that we're going to go see on the Black Sea coast, but Vrana, Vrana, which means crow, the bird. So when it was being built, he had said the first bird that alights on this edifice, I will name this after it. So this is the Vrana Palace right here. And so it does have these beautiful gardens. And this is Simeon. Simeon was the young boy you saw a couple of slides ago. So Simeon was in 1943 when, unfortunately and sadly, his father passed away. He became the king, but he was too young to rule. There was a prince regent. And at the end of World War II, the royal family went to, it's either Spain or Portugal, where he spent a lot of his life. He was born in 1936, I think. So he will be in his 80s now. And so he came back after Bulgaria regained its freedom. He even served as prime minister for 5 years. And there was always talk, should there be royalty again? Well, there probably won't be. But Simeon and his wife live on the grounds of Vrana Palace in a hunting lodge. So I have 3 pieces of trivia for you about Simeon of Bulgaria. And the first is that he's one of 2 rulers in the world today who was also alive during World War II. So you have to figure the other individual is someone who was very young during World War II, and the other individual is the Dalai Lama, who in essence is a ruler in exile. So that's the first point. Secondly, he's the only living person in the world today you can legitimately call Tsar, because that would have been his title, Tsar. And then thirdly, he's one of 2 individuals who previously served in a royal capacity and then was elected in a democratic election, and the other being the now deceased Prince Norodom Sihanouk of Cambodia. So Simeon has all of that. If you ever get him on Jeopardy, you'll say, oh yeah, I remember Simeon. Yeah.
So if his father died in 43, then it's still 2 more years before the doctors were in power to end the Jewish people.
I don't think Bulgaria delivered its Jewish population during the war. I'm not quite sure how they orchestrated it, but it was that is how history has reported it. So, and then this is the hunting lodge where he lives with his wife. And again, that's why I said there's all this talk about he gave the palace back to the people of Bulgaria. Then there's another palace over on the sea, on the Black Sea coast. But I believe most of them he's given back to the Bulgarian state now, with the stipulation that he is able to live on the grounds of Vrana Palace here. And this is the inside. It took them a while because the furniture had been thrown or trashed, but they've really started to fix it up very nicely. And this would be Boris over here on the desk, and then again Ferdinand in one of the pictures. So I'd love to go back and see it sometime. Again, nobody even knew it existed, so little known secret. Yeah, and then this is another day outing from Sofia that deals mostly with Bulgarian revival architecture. It's a tiny town, Koprivstica, but it's just very picturesque to walk around. And they do have a big music festival there, and so that's another popular day outing from Sofia there to see the different styles of houses. Very picturesque. This is big business in Bulgaria. This is not just a day outing. I had shown you a rose at the beginning of my talk and said that it was very significant. So another little known fact is that Bulgaria supplies 60% of the world's rose oil, the attar that's used in the perfume industry. That's a big percentage. And so this is out east of Sofia, probably takes you 2.5 to 3 hours to get to. The main town, it's called the Valley of the Roses, and the main town is Kazanluk, and they have a festival. It goes from May into June for a week or 2 weeks, and the rose oil industry is very, very, very important to to Bulgaria. And they've also built a new museum now there that I have heard they show 26 kinds of roses, and they show you the whole procedure for harvesting and for extracting the oil, and it's quite comprehensive. This would be, there are 3 different kinds of roses grown in this valley, and they are specifically for the attar, and it has to be the petals have to be picked before dawn, when before the dew dries. This is an old-fashioned picture of long ago, the rose petals being harvested, and then again the festival taking place, and these would be the petals being poured into the vats. You need an enormous amount of petals just to make a tiny bit of the rose oil. And I found it hard to believe, but I read that a liter of rose oil is about 40,000 euros, which is 1 to 1 right now. So $40,000 for a quarter of a gallon. This is the pure rose oil used in the perfume industry. So you can see why it's a big, for the economy of Bulgaria. And then just 2 more pictures, lots of ethnic dancing there at the festival. So a really upbeat and a happy festival. So the Valley of Roses is equally as famous as the Rila Monastery for a very different reason. And there they also make firewater, which called rakia in that part of the world. So it's a schnapps. It's very potent. So you could take a little bit of it, but maybe not too much, or you feel it the next day, depending on your tolerance for that kind of thing. So we have been in Sofia, right? Where's my little Sofia over here? We were in Sofia, right there. And we went to Koprivstica, and we went down towards the Rila Monastery, and then this over here, the Valley of the Roses. And we are headed now for the town of Plovdiv, which is right here. And then we're going to go over to the Black Sea coast there. So Plovdiv, I also took this from the internet. Plovdiv is the number 2 city after Sofia in the country. It does have the biggest trade fair complex in the country. It is very, very old. There is a British magazine that about 4 years ago said that they estimated Plovdiv to be about 8,000 years old, the oldest city on the continent and possibly the second oldest in the world after Damascus. I don't know if that's true, but layer upon layer of history. And in 2019, Plovdiv was very, very fortunate. The EU every year, when it's not dealing with COVID, they award 2 cities cultural capitals of Europe. And so in 2019, Plovdiv was chosen as one of them, along with a small town in Italy called Matera. So when you get this designation, this is really a very, very a huge boost culturally, because the EU supports funding for all kinds of cultural programs that last throughout the year, and a lot of visibility, and of course a lot of tourism. Plovdiv was competing in 2019 against a couple of other cities in Bulgaria, but it did win out, and it did very well with that. And Plovdiv is hilly, so this is a really pretty picture just of the different buildings that you would find there. And it has a Roman amphitheater that the Romans left us that we can marvel at. And this is another church that is there named for the mother of Constantine the Great, Helena. And then again, it's very typical in Bulgaria in the old days, this architecture where if the streets were narrow, that it's very narrow, and then the buildings will curve outwards so that the rooms upstairs have a little bit more room. So there's a lot to see and do in Plovdiv. This is the Ethnographic Museum. And during the Cold War years, it was also the center of the tobacco industry. Bulgaria was, during those years, one of the largest tobacco exporters in the world, mostly to the East Bloc. We probably never would have had it here. But so that's the city of Plovdiv. And Bulgaria also has a number of thermal spas ranging with different temperatures and sites. This has also all been developed since we lived there, 92 through 94. There's a particularly interesting one called Hisarya, where the Emperor Diocletian had built a fortress, and so you can combine the spa with the history, and that makes it, of course, even more enticing for visitors when you get that combination. And then a couple of the other monasteries, Bachkovo, that you could visit. The country is latticed with them. And again, they have a lot in common, so I won't go through all that. This was the capital of the Bulgarian Second Empire, Veliko Tarnovo. We're heading towards the seacoast now, built on a river, and with its equal share of history and a fortress. And I particularly like this picture of Gurka Street. Just it's all been. It wouldn't have looked like this from 45 to 90. There wasn't really much incentive to keep your because you didn't own it. It wasn't your property, but it looks absolutely beautiful right now. And then we're coming to Varna, which is the #1 maritime city and the #3 city in Bulgaria on the Black Sea coast. It would be for its own region, the economic capital, the medical center, the as far as the educational center goes. And if you look the way the city is built, you can see how the Black Sea plays a big part in the composition of the town. And Varna has its own share of beautiful buildings that have been restored. And then just north of Varna, you have, and this is the Mother of Dormition, which would be the second largest Eastern Orthodox cathedral after Alexander Nevsky. And just north of Varna, you have a stretch that's very famous called the Golden Sands. So when I said that Bulgaria didn't have the kind of tourism that Hungary did, Bulgaria did have a lot of tourism from within the East Bloc, because you could not necessarily travel outside the East Bloc, but you could travel to each other's countries. And so this was very, very famous for anybody living in the East Bloc who was restricted, obviously in their travel or where they could go. And so now it attracts visitors from all over the world. But the Golden Sands have been famous for years, and they are in a stretch north of Varna. And then what's really fascinating is the Varna necropolis, which is a series of graves over, I think, something like over 200 graves that have been found dating. It is believed to be back to 4000 BC, and again, probably the Thracians, because known for metallurgy and jewelry, and this person obviously held some status. It looks like a ruler with a scepter in his or her hand. But this was an incredible, just out in the field, somebody driving an excavator of the earth stumbled across these. And so this is probably the biggest necropolis or cemetery of its kind in the world with these graves. And again, a display of some of the artifacts that were found there. And this has been on display twice in the United States, I think in '89 and then in '99, Ancient Gold, the Wealth of the Thracians, at a few select museums in our country. And then Nessebar, which is a little UNESCO city out on an island, also very picturesque to walk around. And then finally Burgas, the second largest city down on the seacoast there. Second, and they have, way back when, they had a 5-kilometer stretch just between the sea and the city. And so someone had the idea of developing this floral boulevard, which is very, very attractive, Burgas there. So, and this is an ancient tribal custom called Nestinari, dancing on the fire coals, and they've revived it for the tourist trade. Traditionally, it's only done at one time a year in a certain town, but now they do it in different towns on the Black Sea coast, mainly for the tourist trade there, the Nestinari dancing. So just two more points. The cuisine, a lot of soups and stews and grilled meats. The very famous chopska salad, which was actually a stunt that was pulled in the 60s to promote tourism to a certain area. But it's always tomatoes and cucumbers and onions and the delicious Bulgarian feta cheese, which you can get at some stores in Greater Detroit. I don't know why it has olives. Olives are not so native to Bulgaria, but that particularly does. And this is banitsa. This is the phyllo dough with the cheese, and you can drizzle it with honey or whatever you want. Sometimes it has spinach in it. This is a gevrek, which is actually a Turkish word, which is a kind of a sweet donut with sesame seeds on it. This is tarator. This is a delicious cold cucumber soup with chopped walnuts on the top. And Bulgaria's claim to fame, yogurt. Bulgarians consume an enormous amount of yogurt, more per capita, way more, probably four times as many as Americans do. And we have to pay tribute to this gentleman here, Dr. Stamen Gigorov. Gigorov. You know how Google, now if you go to Google search, they always pay tribute to a person or to something that's happening. They have little cartoons. So anyway, they in 2020 saluted Dr. Gigorov because he was the one who looked through the microscope and he saw the bacteria that made the milk ferment into yogurt, and then he presented his findings at the prestigious Pasteur Institute. So yogurt, I believe, has the Latin name Lactulus bulgaricus, so they honor his native country with that name because of his work. So here he is depicted eating a lot of yogurt. And it's very frequent to have it at all 3 meals of the day, maybe not large amounts, but just as a side dish. And so it is, it's very popular and in Bulgaria. And there's another, just another good-looking stew. So, and then you can buy if you're really into it, the Ultimate Bulgarian Food Guide and see what's in there. So some souvenirs, these little dolls come apart and they have a little vial of rose oil, obviously not the expensive kind, but they're great little souvenirs to take home, or anything really made with soap made of, smelling like roses. These would be textiles, woven cottage industries at home, and just also little mini carpets that you could buy, and pottery. This would be a very typical Bulgarian motif. And then this would be a salute to the Thracians. I don't know how many people really wear belt buckles like this now, but this is a salute to their metallurgy and that sophistication that they used in their work. And a couple of Bulgarians you might not know about, a man named John Atanasov. He was actually the son of a Bulgarian immigrant who did a lot of work with computers. And this is a Bulgarian folk singer. When Voyager went up into space, her song accompanied it in 1977, Valya Balkanska. This is Christo, who has passed away. Christo had something in Central Park 20 years ago, and he was allowed to, when Germany became one again, but the Reichstag was not yet used as the seat of government, he was allowed to wrap it. And it stayed wrapped for 10 days, and it was a huge draw. So Christo, although he never returned to Bulgaria after he left, so there's some comment about was he a true Bulgarian or not. But so Christo, and then Nina Dobrev, who's an actress, and a mural artist named Nassimo, and this gentleman, if you saw the movie The Green Book, he is one of the musicians and I think he may be at the Oscar Awards here because it looks like everybody is all dressed up there. And then I just have a tribute to if you all look of the age where you might think back to 1988, where this gentleman was living in London and a poison-tipped umbrella was jabbed into his leg. And it was proven afterwards that it was probably the Bulgarian Secret Service, so he was a dissident. And so just a tribute to Georgi Markov at the end. So this is my talk about Bulgaria. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something, and I hope I held this microphone correctly the whole time. But anyway, thank you for coming out this evening. Thank you. Yeah. So if you have questions, I'll try comments, criticisms. Judy. I've been back 3 times, but not since they excavated the Roman ruins in the middle of town. I haven't seen that. So, yeah, 3 different occasions. I have a friend there. I had actually hired, it was very easy for us to hire maid/babysitters. It would have been for $200 a week, which is from 9 to 5, which is if you have little children, you don't want to schlep them all over while you're, so anyway, her name is Vesela, but she had a granddaughter, our daughter's age, and so we became friends. It wasn't so much employer-employer relationship, and I'm still I'm still in touch with her. And then again, well, not there, but then the people I've met in the greater Detroit area, this Bulgarian community here, and who may or may not put their Martinitsas up somewhere in this area in front of some deserving library on March the 1st. Yeah. Well, I think you have to, you know, I don't know if they're going to do a reading at the library. I can ask Daniela and let you know. I don't know if usually they just put the display up outside, but they might have an event for, it would be probably they've had an event for children. I don't know if it would be an adult event, and I don't really know what's going on this particular year with it. So, yeah.
Can you give us some idea of the size of Bulgaria in terms of what are states in this country and population size?
It's about like Tennessee, right? And it's about 7 million. Yeah, it's a small country. And unfortunately, they have had a bit of a brain drain. They haven't had the easiest time of it since they regained freedom. They looked at countries like the then Czechoslovakia or Poland or Hungary that seemed to progress forward after 1990, and they've had their share of struggles with corruption, and there have been people who've left the country, but yeah, it's about 7 million people, I think. So it's very safe, by the way, to travel there. I mean, what you always have to watch, pickpockets are everywhere, right? So you do want to watch what you have with you and not be a real naive tourist. But as far as traveling in the country and transportation and being able to get around, it's very easy to do. So, yeah. A wine industry? They do make a lot of wine there. Yes, their own. I don't know how much of it is exported, to tell you the truth, or if we have any in the U.S. But there is a wine industry. Yeah. So, and there is a. I should have remembered the name, because the Bulgarian newsletter every month for the Detroit community always advertises a Balkan tour agency that could probably give you a, just a personalized itinerary and all of that, but yeah, you have to investigate that. But anyway, it's just a lovely country. It's a lesser known country in southeastern Europe, and but we were just fortunate. We had 3 really very lovely years there. When my husband hired the employees in his office, it was sort of like a family, because we were all starting out on a new venture, and so it was very memorable. So we were very fortunate. We had kind of resisted because we were in Toronto. We had our first child. My parents were in Detroit, and he really wanted to go to Hungary, being Hungarian American, but Bulgaria was close enough, and so off we went to Sofia. So it was a great 3 years. So, yeah. Thank you for coming this evening. I appreciate it. Thank you.